Okay, good morning, my very good friends. As I've been talking, I have discovered that basically all the ancient texts seem to be supported by the Mudfossil research that I have done. And I have found the things that they spoke of, the giants, the dragons, all that stuff. And nobody now is dismissing that. The Great Flood, it's all been, even Yale University agrees that there was a great worldwide rapid precipitation, heavy silicon salts that preserved the mud fossils in exceptional preservation, as I have been claiming right along. All of this is written in the ancient texts. Now, that led me to an examination of Jesus. Who was he? What was his role in this whole thing? And why was he so important in history? And who is God? If Jesus is God's son, who really literally is God? And is there more than one God? How many levels of God do we have? And in the final days, they're 100% correct. Increase of knowledge, which is increasing now at an exponential rate, and the lack of wisdom. The increase in knowledge is here, the wisdom is going down this way. The people we always thought were wise and we could rely on and were telling us truth have shown up to be literally a bit fraudulent because they won't engage in discussion about reality. When you hide from evidence that you cannot deal with, that makes you, in my opinion, a fraud. Because you keep claiming the things you've claimed, they're just not right, and you know they're not right. And because you know they're not right, you refuse to engage with me specifically, because I have the evidence to prove that these things that were written were true. And today I am going to pretend that I am God, and how would I go about creating humanity, creation, existence? Where does it come from? Where did it start? And I'm going to just, right off the get-go, I'm going to tell you that nobody ever will ever be able to say where all this stuff came from. Even God himself couldn't say, here's all the stuff that I made, because who made God? You can never get back to the beginning. It is a road to madness. Stay off that road. Say, we started here, and somehow God, to me, there would have to be somebody in charge. Some entity would have to be in charge of all of the details. And I'm talking serious details, because that's how I'm going to get into. What about the development of creatures and planetary systems, and how do you make all that stuff work? And who's going to run it? Who's going to tell the people what they're allowed to do or not allowed to do? There's laws. I'm telling you right now, you have to have laws, you have to have rules, you have to have a lot of emotional things that were represented by actual creatures in these ancient texts. Love, hatred, compassion, desire, all of these things had an actual creature that was its provider, even the weather, everything. And that they had gods for every one of those things. And you know, when you look back at it and you think about it, how would you control that? Does it just happen automatically? It's too intricate of a system to not be to actually just happen all by itself. It's just too many ins and outs that work together, and chemistry and anatomy and all. It's just so advanced that I can't see it ever just happening from pond scum. Where would a pond scum come? Where would a pond come from? So I'm going to start right from the beginning as God, and I control everything. Everything is here. Okay, so here I am, God. Everything is here at my disposal. What would I do with it? Would I just go to sleep? That's not the way I do things. I would want to play around with it. And that's what I think God might have done, is literally playing around with the universe. What works, what doesn't work. Let's talk about how I would handle it if I were God. All right, before we start about how God would develop things and so forth, what you have to understand is God is a scientist. He's a physicist. He's a chemist. He's a mechanical engineer. He's a biological, bacterial, enzyme engineer. He knows how every little molecule works, and he can make anything he wants out of these molecules. But he also knows that the molecules themselves are only made out of two things, a dark particle and a white particle, light and dark, lightness and darkness. Those are the two things that make up everything. And those are the two emotions of humanity. There's the dark side and there's the light side. And that is where all things originate. That is the origin of the universe, is darkness and brightness. All right, let me show you. Those two particles, and only those two particles, make up the entire universe. And God has those to work with. All right, before we get started, again, these are the only two particles that exist. There's a black one that's the darkness, and there's a bright one that is the light. And this is the only one we see is the light, which is this little white one. The darkness, you can't see. All right, but this is the only two particles that exist. Everything there is what God had to use to make everything that there is. And he could add them together in such a way that they could add it to other stuff and divide from other things and split and do all these things and create matter and life and oxygen and gases and metals and all that stuff. He could make all that stuff happen just with these two particles. Now, this is light. Light is these two particles, which is a dipole, which means it's a bar magnet, basically. They're attached just like a bar magnet, one here and one here. This one's up spin or down spin, and this one's up spin, whatever you want to call it. But they glue together, and they actually call them gluons. Now, the two of them together make a photon. That's a photon of light. Now, everything there is made out of that. So we come from light. We actually absolutely come from light. There is no other way to look at it. We are made of these particles. Now, Einstein literally broke physics. All of those guys did. You could accelerate light. It's no problem at all to accelerate light. And it's no problem at all to slow it down. And it is slowing down as it approaches Earth. So all of this astronomy and things that they're calculating, all these distances, it's not working whatsoever, because light, as it hits fields, it will slow down. This is accelerating because we have it going through a venturi, just like in a hose, just like your garden hose almost. And here's what happens at the venturi. The particles which we see here, those two particles, a photon, actually separates at the venturi and becomes this black and white shower. See the shower? Electron shower. That's the white one. These are electrons. Well, electron neutrinos. A dipole electron consists of the white part and the black part. The muon, which goes all by itself, see the black ball rolls all by itself, and the white turns into a huge puff of showers. And the white can get big and small, and the black cannot. The black is just one size fits all. That's it, never changes. That's the end of the black. That's the size. The white can get big, as this one is doing, or get small, as this one is doing. And that lets it squirt through this highly tuned venturi. So the only thing that can get through is the electrons, the white part. This one here can squish down. The black one can't get through. It's a bowling ball. So my claim is that God creates light, and it literally is light, and creates light out of his own light, and it's propagated automatically. And that's exactly what Jesus said. He said, when they ask you where you came, well, here, I'm going to read you the passage. And it's in the Gnostic text, which means knowing, understanding. And these texts had to be hidden because they were they were too much knowledge for the authorities, which would kill you on sight, spouting out these words, because it took away from their status. And just like it is today, it's going to take away their status and their authority, and that would have happened back then too. And it said in the end days, knowledge will be increased, and the lack of knowledge will be increased as well. And it is exactly what's happening right now. I never saw so many blinded people in my life that can just walk away from truth and reality for a comfort zone. It just never worked for me. It still doesn't. Okay, so don't forget, my claim is Einstein literally broke science. This is a particle spinning, the same light particle, but it's in blue, very, very fast. Light spins in a circle just like that. And the blue is really fast. When it comes in, it's going, it slows down. And by the time here, you can only see one white and just almost stacked together solid. And by here, you can see that there is two particles. The blue is very, very fast. The green and the red, the green is maybe like this, and the red is like way out like this, and because it's very slow. And by the time it finally gets slowed down to almost nothing, it's basically not hardly moving anymore. And that's called the cosmic microwave radiation background. It's just because they slowed down so much that they're just barely moving, and they might be just floating, but they're still particles of light. It's just that they're not spinning and moving fast. And they are these particles. All right here, these are the red ones. And they, as again, these are way out here. The blue ones are way down here. And that as they spin, that gives them the energy. The angular momentum really is what gives them the energy. Same particles. It's identical same particle. The green, the blue, and the red. They're all the same because they're photons. And they're all made of the same two particles, only in different states of excitation. The red is not real excited, the green is pretty excited, and the blue is very excited. And here we go to the green. Let me find a green one. Here's a green. All right, same particle. No difference whatsoever between the red and the blue and the green, except the red is not quite as fast and powerful as the green. And the green, again, is not quite as powerful as the blue. And the higher you get into the color, up into the ultraviolet, you get to a point where there's just no more electrons left. And that's called the ultraviolet catastrophe. And it stops emitting light at that point, and all you have is the black particles left. These are being emitted because it's so fast, they're all getting thrown off. And all you have left is the black. Those are the radiation ones, the gamma rays and high energy particles that damage you, X-rays and so forth, that have already gotten rid of almost all of the excess white particles. You see the difference in the power? You saw the blue was just off the chart spinning. The red is dim. You see the dim color and the weakness, and it just gets pushed out of the way as the green exceeds its intensity by many-fold. And it just pushes it out of the way. And they're both coming through the Venturi at the same time, one on top of the other. And the green is pushing the red down, and the green reconcusses out here. So they are two completely separate energy levels, but they are exactly the same particle. It's the spin. And red, green, and blue is what we see from these lasers. Now, there's a whole plethora of colors in the spectrum, and then even this is nothing more. Light is nothing more than vibration. Nothing more than vibration. And the more the vibration, the more energy you have. All right, that's the frequency. This is what Tesla talked about. Frequency and vibration is energy. They always say, when you think of energy, think of frequency, vibration, and energy. The three of them together. Well, it's actually energy is frequency and vibration, because we're all working the same particle. Same particle. Now, sometimes you have big balls of them, some have little tiny bits of them, but it's the same energy on every one of those particles. They're called electron volts. And depending upon how hard that thing hits, basically that's as simple as that. How hard it hits, the more energy electron volts. It's like you throw a rock against a wall, and if it just bounces off the wall, not much energy. You throw it really hard, something's going to break. And that's called energy. And that's what happens when you spin harder and harder and faster these particles. You get more and more energy. Right, they all know they got problems with physics and the cosmos and all of the web and everything that's out there. And they say this new mystery, this neon mystery in the cosmos, Webb telescope, rewrites planet formation playbook. Everything, literally, virtually everything in physics is wrong due to this redshift nonsense, because the expansion of the universe is pulling the particles away. No, it's just slowing down as they're coming to us. That's why they shift red. All right, so before we get decided how we're going to handle making the universe, we got to make some assumptions. How long are the days of Genesis? How long are they? 24-hour days? 1,000 years? 100 years? A year? Who knows? These are assumptions you have to make. Now, did the author of Genesis intend to communicate that God created everything in 6 24-hour days? Or are the days meant to be understood in like ages or whatever? That I can't tell you. Nobody that I know could possibly understand how quick this happened. But in Genesis, they're talking about the creation of man, and man, let there be light and all that stuff. Let me explain to you my take on this based on Apollodorus, who was the first, basically, he wrote all of the stuff of the first Greek writers of mythology. And the reason I point to that is because of Typhon in the desert in Morocco, attacking the fish, identical to what it says in Apollodorus. And he was so tall his head would brush the stars. And that's how big this thing is, literally. It covers all of North Africa, attacking a gigantic fish. Exactly what it was written in Apollodorus. 100% exactly. Exactly. That he would be breathing fire, a giant dragon breathing fire, chasing the gods who changed themselves into animals. And this animal that he attacked just happened to be a fish. And it's there right in the desert. I've shown it hundreds of times. So it's up to you. If you want interested in reality, you have to look at this stuff, because this was what was written, and it was written in Apollodorus. This is the guy right here, Apollodorus. He was around 180 BC, something like that, around 2nd century BC. And then they say, oh, his authorship is now dismissed. They have no idea what happened, and nobody can possibly believe that this stuff is true, because right here, look at this. This is about Prometheus, who was the man, who was the god who molded man out of clay. Deucalion was Noah, which was his son. Deucalion was Noah, and he did tell him to build a chest and provision it and ride out this storm, because Prometheus knew that we were going to have this disaster created by Zeus when he produced Venus to almost smash into Earth. And here's the War of the Gods and Typhon. Typhon's the guy we're talking about, right? This is 162. And it's talking about Hercules and Hera and Zeus and all of this stuff, all of the giants, and shot by Apollo with an arrow in the left eye and by Hercules in his right eye. And this one killed Dionysus with a Thyris, and Cyclides by Hector and torches, and Mimas by Hephaestus with missiles of red-hot metal. These people were just outrageously violent, nasty people. And Enceladus fled, but Athena threw on him in his flight the island of Sicily. These were just gigantic creatures. I know it's insane, but when you see the size of Typhon, it's all pretty, he's much bigger than Sicily. She flayed Phalus and used his skin to shield her own body in the fight. And it goes on and on and on. Anyway, let's get to where Typhon comes in. Because the other giants, Zeus smote and destroyed with thunderbolts, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. Now don't forget, Zeus killed the giants. Well, who was the giants? The giants were Earth's children. Earth gave birth to all these monsters, and we're going to read about them in a minute. And all of those monsters were her children. So when the gods had overcome the giants, the Zeus is part of the god guys. All right, when those gods had overcome the giants, killed them all, Earth was enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon, who is the giant dragon in the desert. And in size and strength he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. His thighs were of human shape, and that's the only thing human about him. His head often brushed the stars. All right, he had dragon coils. From his thighs downward he had huge coils of vipers, and they hissed and had dragons' heads all over them. And then Typhon hurled kindled rocks. He made for the very heavens, where all the gods were, with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. And then Zeus cut Typhon down. But there's the gods changing into animals, and Typhon did attack the fish and got the fish. They're both laying there dead in the desert. And you can't miss them. You just go on top of Morocco and look down. You got a dragon attacking a fish, a big black stripe coming down onto a gigantic fish. All right, this is Typhon highlighted in the desert, but this is him unhighlighted. And he's spouting this great jet of fire down onto a fish. This is the fish's fin. And the things are just absolutely unbelievable. Now, all down here is the body fluids. All these are fluids that run off of his dead body. And this is his throat, and they have this little flashy, fluty looking thing that goes down their bodies. You see them all in the parades in China and so forth. But this is, you go on top of North Africa and you look down, this is all Morocco in this area. And there he is. All right, this is his dragon skin. This is where the skin is, where the viper coils come out. This, if you took this picture to somebody that does tanning, they would say, yeah, that's what leather's like. It has these little knots, and they form like this, so leather can stretch and do this and do that and move around and everything and come back to where it's supposed to be based on these little knotty spots. All right, and that's Typhon's coils. There's a wider shot. There they are right there. I mean, this is what it is. Again, if you show this to somebody that does leather, and they'll tell you this is like ostrich hide, something like that. All right, I've shown this literally hundreds of times. I'm not going to go deep into it. That's his head spitting out the great jet of fire, trying to kill this fish who was a god that changed herself or his self into a fish. And they have coins showing this. There's a whole batch of dragon coins showing the dragon attacking a fish. This was well known in the history. And here he is running the whole length of North Africa. This is all Morocco in here. This is 1,100 miles long. These creatures were celestial beings, and they were talked about in the ancient past, these huge, gigantic creatures in the sky, like celestial people in the sky. And that's exactly what they were, it appears to me. Now, how they lived, how they ate, I don't know. The Earth could have been much different back then. The Earth right now is well known, and I understand the whole deal. And there is a literal firmament around Earth. That's true, and it is literally, you could take it as a dome, and it's penetrable by the light. The light above it is still light, and it's still the particles, but they're not condensed enough. When you get underneath, you create the waters. So the waters above, uncondensed, are separated from the waters below, which turn into rain and everything else that we need to live. And that zone out there is the hot zone. That's the ionosphere. And that's where we scrub, because we are spinning as a round globe through the universe. Now, people look at these things and they say, oh, they're telling us lies about the size of the Earth. No, there's no gigantic conspiracy, hundreds of thousands of people making up cartoons about space. They're up there in the space station. I do research. I am a material researcher. When I see something, I investigate it, and then I make my own determination. My determination is we're absolutely 100%, no question whatsoever, have gone to Mars and have looked at the things that are on Mars, and the erosion on Mars is 100% different than it would be on Earth, and I understand those erosion patterns, and there is no truly running off rivulets and all that kind of stuff to speak of on Mars. Mars is a dry, desolate, dead planet. I don't think there's any life still roaming around up there. It doesn't look like it to me. It would have a very, very difficult time. And there was a terrible, terrible gash in Mars. And Venus shows that impact site as well, because it was also written in the ancient text. Venus almost hit Earth, caused all of this destruction all over Earth, the floods and everything. This is Noah's flood. This is when it happened. And Venus was ejected by Jupiter, who was the great feared god. He was the god that was in charge here. So now, I am the big, big god. All right, how would I have started Earth and all this business and planets and everything? Well, let's start talking about that in a second, but let's just finish up about here. That's the fish right here. And he's being attacked by Typhon. Typhon runs the whole length of North Africa, and all his coils run way up over here. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. So, and I have dozens of videos about this. Let's just carry on from here and see how did it get to be so bad? What went so wrong? If God wanted to create something, why couldn't he create something good and just make it good right from the start? Because it didn't start well. And as far as Apollodorus says, it did not start well. Let's go back and look at how it started and what God did or didn't do as this thing progressed. Because it got worse and worse and worse. Okay, my friends, this is going to be a trip into the past and possibly into the future. Now, there was ancient Greek texts that they called a myth. Myth. It's just a silly stories. Well, and I always bought that. I said, yeah, they got to be crazy. It's insane. The birth of Zeus, war of the Titans, the Olympian gods. And when you read Metamorphosis by Ovid, it'll freak you right out, because he talks about the same stuff, and he says they could change themselves into anything they wanted. Let me just read you the first words out of his opus magnum, huge work that covered everything from the things that we're going to be talking about here up until Julius Caesar. The first words out of his mouth was this. He was right about the birth of Christ, right at that exact same time Julius Caesar and all that was here. All right, so this is called Metamorphosis, and it was a very comprehensive chronological recounting of the creation of the world all the way up to the death of Julius Caesar, which occurred only a year before Ovid's birth. So he wrote it all the way up till basically his time. And he talks about the divine comedy, the avenging gods, the pathos of love, Rome, and deified ruler. And then all of these are his books. The creation, ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who is Noah, Pyrrha, Apollo, Daphne. All of these are gods and goddesses. And all of these are books about what was written in the actual history. What was the chronological order? Who bore who did this, who did that, who was in charge of what, all the way down, Ajax, Ulysses, the fall of Troy. All right? I mean, all of them, Pythagoras. And now, the first words out of his mouth was this. Right? He said, metamorphosis is like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, that type of thing, which is a complete transformation. It's the unifying theme. All of his stuff is based around their ability to morph. So it's a unifying theme amongst the episodes of Metamorphosis, which is his great work. Ovid raises the significance explicitly, very, very demandingly, openly, in the opening lines of his work, his poem, they call it. And it's in Greek, it says, In nova fert animus mutatus dicere formos corpora. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. So something was changed into something else. And it says, accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. All right, violence upon a victim who becomes part of the landscape. And it talks about the difference between love and hate and hunter and hunted and so forth. The theme amalgamates the much explored opposition between the hunter and the hunted, love and hate, tensions, love, art, and so forth. And all of these things, all of these emotions and feelings and so forth are given a human persona, and they love and nature and everything, and they can transform into anything they want. Listen to the transformations that can happen. Wait till you hear this. Now this is another one. It's the Theogony by Hesiod, and he also wrote Works and Days. Works and Days, I think it was called. But he was one of the first writers, and he wrote the things that the daughters of Zeus told him to write. Zeus was the god at that time, and they could morph, like I said, they could become fungus, they could become ants, they could become trees and plants and rivers and constellations and planets. They could make themselves anything they want, and these gods were immortal, so as far as I'm concerned, they're still around somewhere. I don't see them hanging around here, but they're around somewhere, and I think they're off-world. If they are, boy, I tell you, it gets crazy. But if they're immortal, what are you going to do about that? And I know these things happen. All right, so my claim is we all came from somewhere, and everything came from somewhere, and everything is these particles of light. The world and the universe is not an empty, void place. It's what they call quantum foam. It means the universe is not empty, it's filled with these particles. And these are the particles that come from the sun and from stars. And now, what does it say? Jesus said, if they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light. And the only place I know where light comes from is sun and stars. And this is we came from the light, the place where the light came into being on its own accord. Just exactly it just comes out of there on its own accord and established itself and became manifest. And after it established itself in the world that we live in, it became manifest through their image. So the gods, in their godly image, apparently are like us. And then they have transformed themselves into becoming the rulers of different regions by becoming suns and stars and gods and angels and all that stuff. It appears. So let's just read this again so it makes sense. Because it makes sense to me. If people ask you, where did you come from? Meaning, where did you godly people come from? Well, or basically everybody. Just say to them, they should have said, we all came from the light, the place where the light came into being on its own accord and established itself and became manifest through their image. If they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children. We are the children of the light. We grew up from the particles that came down from the light. We are the elect of the living Father. That means our particles, somewhere along the line, it kicked off a little spark in us to become a living entity amongst all of these other particles that are just floating around as raw materials for life. Basically, that's the way I'm seeing things now. And it says, what is the sign of your Father in you? Who is the light? What is the sign of your Father in you? It's movement and it is repose. The light is zip, or it's just sitting back, hanging around. It's the same particle, whether it's moving or not. If it's moving real fast, it's bright light. If it's moving real slow, it's in the red spectrum. If it's just barely moving, it's literally sound. It's sort of bump, 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 bump. And then it's nothing other than just a cosmic microwave background. It's just sitting around, laying around out there, because it slows down. It's slow, and I showed you light speeds up, slows down, no question about that. Einstein broke physics. As soon as you go against Einstein, you're an idiot. So nobody will go against him, so they have to say that the universe is expanding, pulling the light, because light can't slow down, we all know that. Well, the universe is absolutely saturated with fields of light, and we do know that light will slow down in these fields. It actually comes to almost a complete rest, and it does eventually. I mean, these particles could be coming from a long way, I don't know. But they're coming through so many fields that they could be slowing down very quickly. And they say we're judging the size of the universe and the expansion of the universe and all this based on the speed of light. Well, the speed of light is so variable, you can't make any heads or tails of looking out and seeing a particle shifting, because the shift comes from it slowing down as it comes, not from its being pulled away. So the redshift is a problem, which, you know, conflates everything. So nobody understands anything because they don't understand the particles that make anything. They don't understand dipole electron flood theory. That's what makes everything that dark and the white. It's either darkness or light. You live in the darkness or living in the light. Now, they can be separated, I can see that. And it appears that the darkness goes to the center, and the white surrounds the darkness and coats it. Has that got any meaning to do with God? I don't know. But it's got meaning to do with the particles. And God's working with the particles. And just as Ovid said in a metamorphosis, they could change themselves into fungus or ants. They could change sexes. They could change themselves into rivers. Anything they wanted. And they changed themselves. They saw women looking on, you know, they were supposed to take care of the women. Here's what happened. Me as God, I am going to tell you exactly what went wrong. All right? Hold on. All right, I'm going to tell you right now, I believe the book of Enoch, his books that he wrote, were true documents of the actual faults of the Watchers, who were the ones that God sent down to watch over humanity, to help them along, to foster their development and to help them. Instead, 200 of the Watchers, which we all know 200 fallen angels supposedly went with Satan to come down and basically have sex and parties and all that stuff with the women. Now, how did they do that if they were angels and they had gigantic wings? They could all change themselves. They could change into anything they wanted, and they did. They set up a palace up on Mount Olympus for headquarters. And they came down as really hot-looking guys, and they selected all the best women and had sex with them and just had parties. And then it went wrong because the angel part of them ended up having babies that grew up to be absolute monsters and giants and all kinds of terriblest things. Now, so here what we have is God putting somebody in charge that went against him and said, hey, look, what's he going to do? If two of us sign up for this, we'll just go do it and we'll have a good time and we can do it anything we want. What's he going to do to us? Well, it ends up that he imprisoned them. And Enoch was the intermediary between God and these fallen angels, and he writes all about this stuff. Now, supposedly this was written in around the first century BC. All right, that's not that long ago. And he's talking about the Nephilim, which is a race of hybrids. And they were giants. They were absolutely huge. They were 2.5 miles tall, a lot of them. And this is why they took the book out of the Bible, because it was very, very solidly supported by, well, it is 100% solidly supported now by the Mudfossils, no question whatsoever. And anyway, what I'm getting at is they took the book of Enoch out because it was too spectacular, too crazy. Who's going to believe there was miles tall people? So they removed these things from the biblical text, and they removed a lot of things. So after we get past Enoch, the rest is sort of, for me, it's there's too many variations. Enoch is talking about these giants. So here's what happened. I talked to God, and he said no, and he imprisoned them, and there was 200 of them, and they did this and they did that, and they had giants 2.5 miles tall, and they said, you're a crazy guy, and just go sit in the woods. And they took him out of the Bible. So, and also the Colburn Bible was written at the same time as the Bible. And they talk about the seas boiling and all the other stuff, the same things. Almost every other text in the world talks about this catastrophe that happened and the great flood, and all of these things that did happen were written about in the past, in every culture. So I give them credence now, especially when I talk about Typhon and showing you about Typhon. And then when you start reading Apollodorus and seeing the insanity of it, you'll see that God was just, when you create a solar system, it looks like you get what you get, and you hope for the best. And if somebody if it doesn't work out right, well, you just keep going around. But eventually, it just never got better, it looks like to me. Because we're in a situation now that's just not looking good for the planet, or for mankind, or for the health of the earth, or for anything. I hate to be a downer, but, you got to confront what you got to confront. So, Apollodorus, the stories in Apollodorus are just stunning. You want to be shocked, read Apollodorus. All right, let me just read you a little bit of Apollodorus. Think about me as God, and I have a bag full of particles. I got black and white particles. I got them coming out of my ears, and they're just everywhere in the universe. So what am I going to do? I am going to start a new solar system. And I got to organize it. I got all kinds of things to do. Construction, I got a materials list, I got all kinds of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is throw a whole batch of raw materials into that. And we call it chaos. You just throw it in there. So now we got a ton of chaos going on in this region, and everything's swirling, and these black and white particles are pushing and pulling and doing all these things. They're all energetic and banging around and doing everything, and they start to glob together and congeal, and eventually they create this. And again, I don't know where they came from. God wouldn't even know where he came from. There's nobody can say where anything came from. It is here. Now, so here's what happened. After I throw all this stuff out in chaos, it starts to form. Now, Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world. All right, so the world turned into sort of a ball of stuff. Having wedded the earth, he begat first the 100-handed, as they were named, Briareus, Gaius, Codus, who were unsurpassed in size and might, each of them having 100 hands and 50 heads. That's why nobody wanted to see this in the ancient texts. You don't read this stuff, all right, unless you read up the ancient myths. Now, after these, Earth bore, now don't forget, these are Earth's children. Earth bore him the Cyclopses, to wit, Argus, Lippus, Brontes, of whom each had one eye on his forehead. But them Sky bound and cast into Tartarus. So Sky was the husband. He said, these are nasty things. So he threw them down into Tartarus. Now don't forget, Tartarus ended up mating with the earth to create Typhon. I think I told you that, but we got to follow this through. So Sky bound and cast all of these creatures into Tartarus, who were Earth's children. It's a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from Earth as Earth is distant from the sky. Now, again, he begat children by Earth. Titans, as they are named, Ocean, Cous, Hypernus, Crius, Lapetus, the youngest of all, Cronus, also daughters, the Titanides, as they are called, Techis, Rhea, Phoebe, Diona, and Thea, Manamasi, and Themis. Now, but Earth grieved at the destruction of her children. He was eating the kids, killing them. So Earth grieved at the destruction of her children, who had been cast into Tartarus, persuaded the Titans to attack the sky, who was their father, and gave Kronos, one of the bound up Titans, an adamantine sickle. And they, all but Ocean was scared. The rest of them said, okay, we'll do it. We'll attack him, and we'll cut off his testicles. So Cronus cut off his father's genitals, his testicles, and threw them into the sea. And from the drops of the flowing blood were born the Furies, Electo, Tisiphone, and Megaria. And having dethroned their father, they brought up their brethren who had been hurled down to Tartarus and committed the sovereignty to Kronos. So now, they basically killed their father, dethroned him. I don't think you can kill him because he's a god. So they dethroned him. And they brought up all of the monsters that he had thrown into Tartarus. So, but then he again bound and shut them up in Tartarus and wedded his sister Rhea. And since both earth and sky foretold him that he would be dethroned by his own son, so Cronus bound them up and shut them up in Tartarus. He turned them against him. And he wedded his own sister, and since both earth and sky told him that he would be dethroned by his own son, he swallowed all his offspring. So anytime she gave birth, he ate the baby. His firstborn Hestius he swallowed, then Demeter and Hera, and after them Pluto and Poseidon. Remember these names? These are pretty big shot names. And he ate them all. And don't forget, in Revelations it talks about the dragon and the lady. Now he was a dragon. Kronos was a dragon. As far as I'm concerned, they were all dragons back then. Pretty much. Or they could convert from one thing to another, but dragons, there was a lot of them. And the thing about the red dragon coming down, swooping down to eat the baby as soon as it was born, and somebody swooped in and took it and hid it for 3.5 years or something. And that's exactly what happened to Zeus. All right, so enraged at this, Rhea repaired to Crete when she was big with Zeus. Now remember this about the lady and the dragon being swooped in and eaten. So Rhea hid out in Crete when she was big with Zeus. She's ready to give birth, and brought him forth in a cave. She gave birth to him in a cave. She gave him to the Curetes and the nymphs and the daughters of Melissus to nurse. So she hid him in this cave. And then I'll read it to you. The nymphs fed the child on milk of Amalthea, and the Curetes in arms guarded the babe in the cave. Listen to this. They were clashing their spears on their shields in order that Kronos might not hear the child's voice. But Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Kronos to swallow as if it were the unborn child. And don't forget about the dragon coming down to eat the child. That's pretty unusual coincidence. And being the child swooped away and being hidden to become, well, we should read that, because it talks about ruling with a rod of iron, and that's what Zeus did. So as far as I'm concerned, this was the baby that was hidden away and was Zeus. When Zeus was full grown, he took Metis, daughter of Ocean, to help him, and she gave Kronos a drug to swallow. Forced him to disgorge everything, first the stone and then the children. So he threw up all these children whom he had swallowed. And with their aid, Zeus waged war against Kronos and the Titans. This is where it starts to be, everything's wars. Nothing but wars from then on. 100% wars, as we see today. They fought for 10 years. Earth prophesied victory to Zeus if he should have as allies those who had been hurled down to Tartarus. So he says, I'll go along with all these bad guys. So he slew their jaileress. So the one that was keeping them in Tartarus, Campy, and loosened their bonds. And the Cyclopses gave Zeus thunder and lightning and a thunderbolt. Pluto bestowed a helmet and Poseidon a trident. Armed with these weapons, the gods overcame the Titans. So that's when they killed all the Titans and so forth. Now, and then they shut them, well, I guess you can't kill these guys, but anyway, they shut them up in Tartarus and appointed the 100 handers that's to be their guards. But they themselves cast lots for the sovereignty, and to Zeus was allotted the dominion of the sky, to Poseidon the sea, Pluto the dominion in Hades. Zeus was a big guy. Now, to the Titans were born offspring, the oceans. Tethys, born Oceanides. Asia, Styx, Electra, Doris, all of these different names, Conus, Phoebe, were born Asteria and Latona. I don't really understand a lot of this, I got to be honest with you. But these are all things. Look, Taia were born the dawn, the sun, and the moon. These are all things. And then there was emotions being born and everything. Everything had to be developed, and this talks about all this stuff. Zeus wedded Hera and begot Hebe. He had intercourse with many women, both mortals and immortals. He was out of control, and he was the god of this solar system at this point. So, who put him in charge to be the god? Because he was the one that went against the real God, as far as I'm concerned, because he was in control of the solar system. He was supposed to be taking care of things. He got 200 of the 600 watchers to sign a pact to say, we'll go down and we'll just have a party, and you know, there's nothing they can do about it. And that turned out not well for Zeus and his crew. And then they were held up in, I believe this is where Enoch comes in, because they all were cast into Tartarus, basically. I mean, it goes on and on and on, but the 1.6.3, I showed you Typhon in the desert. And here, I think maybe I even showed you this, but this is when Zeus killed all of the, I believe I did go through this. I got interrupted a couple times, as always happens to me. Anyway, the gods killed all the giants, and those were Earth's children. She was enraged, and she had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon. He's the dragon that I showed you, and I showed you all about him. I'm sure I remember doing that. And this, as far as I'm concerned now, this is all based in some form of fact. Now, there might be a little twist here and a twist there, but you see what's coming on here. And Prometheus and Deucalion. Prometheus was the one who molded mankind. Prometheus had a son, Deucalion. He was Noah. This is Greek. They call him Deucalion. The rest call him Noah. He reigned in the region about Pythia and Meropyra, the daughter of Hephaestus and Pandora. And Pandora was the first woman fashioned by the gods. When Zeus would destroy the men of the Bronze Age, Deucalion, who was Noah, by the advice of his father Prometheus, constructed a chest. And having stored it with provisions, he embarked. That's the Noah story. Right? And then at the end, when he came to rest, Deucalion, floating in a chest over the sea for 9 days and as many nights, drifted to Parnassus. And there, when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus, the god of escape. So he allowed him to escape. Zeus sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose what he would choose. What do you want to do now that you're here? He said, I need men. I want to choose men. Get me some men. So now, at the bidding of Zeus, he took up stones, which are nothing more than dead bodies anyway, and threw them over his head, and the stones which Noah threw became men, and the stones which his wife threw became women. Hence, people were called metaphorically los, a stone. Laos, a stone, which people are basically. Anyway, and Deucalion had children by Pyra, first Helen, whose father some say was Zeus. Zeus was all over the place. And second, Aphrodite, who reigned over Attica after Cranius. And third, a daughter, Protogenia, who became the mother of Eleusis by Zeus. See Zeus again. I'm telling you, this guy was out of control. And it goes on and on, it goes on and on. I mean, it's all crazy, crazy, crazy. Poseidon. And here's another one. He was the son of Zeus. I mean, Zeus. No, and that's exactly what they said. That's what the god, the one that went against God, did. He was just, and he was Zeus, who was the god of this region. And the one that put him in control, as far as I'm concerned, had to be the sun, the place where the light comes of its own accord. It's the only place I know of. And we are the children of the sun. And Zeus was the next in line. It's almost as big as the sun, or very big, not quite as strong. And the sun was the one that was radiating the light. He was the giver of life, the giver of light. And Zeus was supposed to be his guy, taking care of his creation. See, he threw all kinds of crazy things down there and said, let's start some life down there. Now, Zeus, I don't think, was involved in all of this crazy stuff in the beginning, 100-handers and all that. Right, remember this here? Sky ruled over the earth. I mean, Sky wetted the earth and had these crazy creatures. Now, that would have been chaos to me. So the sky sort of emerged from this chaos, and so did the earth all sort of ball up together. And between the two of them, they fell in love or something and had sex, and before long they had all these monsters. And then it went really bad after that, as I have explained. And all of these books are all, Perseus, that's just absolutely crazy. And these are the walls. Heracles was Hercules. Heracles is the Greek. And all these different things, Europa, these are all moons, and these are all the stories of what happened in the earliest days of humanity. And it's just, it's crazy and it's insane, and who knows? See, here it is. Like, Zeus caused oath to be sworn by the water of Styx. These are the 200 guys who came down to take over the earth. And he had them sign up at the river Styx. He caused oaths to be sworn, bestowing this honor on her because she and her children had fought on his side against Titans. I don't know maybe I'm wrong. All right, forget that last story. But listen to this. It's just unbelievable. You know, as far as the oath going, somewhere they signed a pact, 200 guys, to come down. Now, that was a different oath, apparently. But listen to this. Eutrip had, by the river Strymon, a son, Rhesus. So the river caused her to have a son, Rhesus, whom Diomedes slew at Troy. But some say his mother was Calliope. Thalia had by Apollo the Corybantes, and Melphone had by Achilles the Sirens, of whom we shall speak in treating of Ulysses. Now listen to this. Hera gave birth to Hephaestus without intercourse with the other sex, but according to Homer, he was one of her children by Zeus. Oh, Zeus, you devil, you. And maybe literally. Him, a Zeus cast out of heaven. All right? So he cast Hephaestus out of heaven because he came to rescue Hera in her bonds. For when Hercules had taken Troy and was at sea, Hera sent a storm after him. So Zeus hung her from Olympus. Oh my God. Hephaestus fell on Lemnos and was lamed of his legs, but Thetis saved him.
Zeus, here he is again, had intercourse with Metis, who turned into many shapes in order to avoid his embraces. When she was with child, Zeus, taking time to buy the forelock, swallowed her. Oh, man. Because Earth said that after giving birth to the maiden who was then in her womb, Metis would bear a son who should be the Lord of heaven. From fear of that, Zeus swallowed her. And when the time came for the birth to take place, Prometheus, or as others say, Hephaestus, smote the head of Zeus with an axe, and Athena, fully armed, leaped up from the top of his head at the river Triton. Now, I don't know about that, but Zeus did, as Jupiter, give birth to Venus, who almost killed Earth and then did hit Mars and wiped Mars out. This is, like I said, this is just so far beyond anybody's ability to even start to think it could possibly be true.